The first sign that my private love confession had become a corporate emergency was not the security team outside my apartment. It was not the 73 unread messages on my phone. It was not even the fact that 3 of the most powerful women in the country had cancelled an international board meeting at the exact same time. No, the first sign was the flowers. I walked into conference room 12 at 8 in the morning and found 3 arrangements waiting on the table. White roses in a black glass vase, wild orchids wired with tiny blue lights, red camellias arranged so perfectly they looked like they had been disciplined into blooming. 3 cards rested beside them. The first said, "I feel the same, Helena." The second said, "I knew it. Dinner tonight? Roxy." The third said, "You should have told me sooner, darling, Celeste." I read all 3 cards twice, then a third time, because apparently shock can temporarily destroy reading comprehension. The conference room doors opened behind me. Helena Cross entered first, dressed in a charcoal suit sharp enough to qualify as a weapon. She was the chief executive of Cross Meridian Holdings, a woman who had once ended a hostile takeover with a 12-minute presentation and a single raised eyebrow. She looked at the white roses, then at me. "You received them." That was not a question. Before I could answer, Roxy Chen came through the other door wearing a silver jacket over a t-shirt that said, "I void warranties." She had founded Neon Forge Technologies at 22, become a billionaire at 26, and had never learned that conference tables were not designed to be sat on. She jumped onto the edge of this one and grinned at me. "I told you the message was about me." Helena turned her head by approximately 2 degrees. "It was not about you." Roxy pointed toward the orchids. "Those flowers have Bluetooth. Of course it was about me." The final door opened, and Celeste Laurent walked in as if the room had been waiting for permission to become elegant. She controlled Laurent House, a global empire of hotels, fashion labels, and restaurants where a glass of water cost more than my first phone. She placed one gloved hand on the back of a chair and studied the other 2 women with a calm smile. "You both appear confused. Lena's letter clearly referred to me." My mouth finally remembered how to work. "What letter?" Silence. Roxy's grin faded. Helena went completely still. Celeste removed one glove, finger by finger. Then my phone vibrated. Priya, my best friend, and the person who was supposed to receive every terrible decision I made after midnight, had sent me a screenshot. At the top was the message I had written at 1:17 that morning. "I think I am in love with her. I love the way she notices when I am tired and pretends helping me is only practical. I love that she watches every door until I walk through it. I love the way she trusts almost no one, but sometimes, when we are alone, she looks at me like I am the safest place she has ever found. I know telling her would complicate everything, so I will not. I just needed to tell someone before this feeling swallowed me whole." It was honest. It was humiliating. It was also not the problem. The problem was the line above it. Recipients: Helena Cross, Roxy Chen, Celeste Laurent. I had not sent my confession to Priya. I had sent it to all 3 of my bosses. My phone vibrated again. Priya had added one sentence beneath the screenshot. "Lena, why are 3 billionaires asking me which one you love?" I slowly lifted my head. 3 women were watching me with 3 very different expressions. Helena looked controlled, which for her meant terrified. Roxy looked hopeful enough to power a small city. Celeste looked calm, but her bare fingers were gripping the chair hard enough to whiten at the knuckles. Helena spoke first. "We can resolve this professionally." Roxy laughed. "You sent flowers to her apartment at 6 in the morning. They were delivered to the office." The security team outside her apartment was yours. There have been reporters near her building. Because you posted a heart on the company network. It was a private heart. You have 8 million followers. Celeste raised one hand. Ladies. Lena appears unwell. All 3 women immediately turned toward me. That was somehow worse. I set my phone on the table with great care. None of you were supposed to read that. Roxy slid off the table. But we did. Yes. And it describes one of us. I looked at Helena. She had spent 3 months quietly moving every late meeting to a room closer to the elevator because she knew I disliked empty corridors after dark. I looked at Roxy. She had built an alert into my calendar that ordered food whenever I worked through lunch, then claimed it was a software test. I looked at Celeste. She had once delayed a motorcade for 11 minutes because my bus was late, and she refused to enter a gala until she saw me arrive safely. The letter described all 3 of them. That realization should have helped. It did not. Celeste's voice softened. Lena, which one of us did you mean? I looked at 3 CEOs who negotiated with governments, frightened entire boards, and had apparently spent the night deciding that my accidental confession belonged to each of them. Then I said the only truthful thing available to me. I do not know. For the first time since the Asterion partnership began, 3 billionaires looked equally stunned. Unfortunately, confusion did not make any of them less determined. If anything, it made them competitive. 3 months earlier, I was not the kind of woman billionaires sent flowers to. I was the kind of woman who ordered flowers for other people, checked the spelling on the cards, and then stayed late to fix the invoice when an executive decided 12 dozen roses should be classified as stakeholder engagement. My name is Lena Hart. I was 27 years old, permanently overcaffeinated, and employed as a senior communications coordinator at Cross Meridian Holdings. Senior sounded impressive, until you learned it meant I performed the work of a manager while waiting for someone to approve the title and salary. I was good at my job. Very good. I could turn a 6-hour executive argument into a 2-page briefing. I could read a hostile reporter's question and identify the lawsuit hidden inside it. I could convince 3 departments that they had reached the same conclusion even when one of them had spent the entire meeting threatening to resign. What I could not do was persuade Grant Mercer, chairman of the executive board, that I deserved to lead the new strategic communications division. You need more visibility, he told me during my 4th promotion review. I was sitting across from him in an office with glass walls, which made the statement feel personally insulting. I managed communications for the Eastbridge recall. You supported the response. I wrote the response. Under executive supervision. The executive supervising me was in Switzerland. Grant smiled with the patient expression men like him reserve for women who have introduced facts into a comfortable conversation. You are extremely capable, Lena. But leadership is not only competence. It is presence. When the right opportunity comes, make people notice you. I left his office with a professional smile and the powerful desire to throw his decorative globe through a window. The right opportunity arrived 48 hours later, disguised as a disaster. Cross Meridian announced a joint global venture with 2 companies, Neon Forge Technologies and Laurent House. The partnership was called Asterion because apparently billionaires believe naming a corporate alliance after a constellation makes it sound less like 3 predators agreeing to hunt together. Cross Meridian would provide infrastructure and finance. Neon Forge would provide artificial intelligence and security systems. Laurent House would provide property, hospitality, and consumer reach. Together, They planned to build smart emergency shelters in major cities, luxury buildings that could transform into public crisis centers during storms, fires, or infrastructure failures. It was ambitious, it was useful, it was also immediately surrounded by suspicion. Labor groups questioned the project. City officials wanted guarantees. Reporters called it disaster capitalism with better furniture. Each company released a separate statement, contradicting the other two. By the end of the first day, Asterion had 3 logos, 4 slogans, and no unified public message. At 6 that evening, the director of communications entered the staff room, looking as if she had witnessed the end of civilization. We need one person to coordinate all 3 executive offices until the launch. Nobody moved. She looked around the room. This is a career-making assignment. 2 people suddenly became interested in the fire exit. Someone near the coffee machine whispered that the last person who corrected Helena Cross in a meeting had transferred to a monastery. That was not true. It was a silent retreat in Vermont. I thought about Grant telling me I needed visibility. I thought about the director position I had already been doing half the work for. Then I raised my hand. I will do it. The room became quiet in the respectful way people become quiet when someone volunteers to enter a dangerous building. My first meeting was with Helena Cross. Helena's office occupied the highest floor of the Cross Meridian Tower and contained almost nothing personal. 1 desk, 2 chairs, a wall of windows, no photographs, no awards, no evidence that the woman who controlled shipping routes, banks, and half the warehouses on the eastern seaboard had ever experienced an emotion unrelated to quarterly performance. She did not ask me to sit. The Asterion press conference is in 5 days, she said. Neon Forge wants to demonstrate an untested evacuation system. Laurent House wants to host the event in a ballroom with 600 candles. Both ideas are unacceptable. I placed my tablet on her desk. The evacuation system passed its independent safety review yesterday. Helena looked up. It was not in the board packet. Roxy Chen published the results on an engineering forum at 3 this morning under the username Definitely Not the CEO. Helena stared at me. And the candles? They are electric. That is worse. Probably, but not dangerous. Helena leaned back slightly. You are correcting me. I considered lying. Then I remembered the promotion. I am preventing you from rejecting 2 proposals based on incomplete information. The room remained silent for several seconds. Then Helena pushed the briefing folder toward me. Sit down. I sat. For the next hour, she questioned every line of the communications plan. I answered what I knew, admitted what I did not, and refused to promise outcomes no one could control. Helena tried 3 times to intimidate me into changing an estimate. I declined 3 times. At the end of the meeting, she closed the folder. Who wrote the public risk section? I did. It is direct. The public is already suspicious. Polite language will sound evasive. Most employees tell me what they believe I want to hear. That sounds inefficient. Something changed in her expression, not a smile. Helena Cross did not smile at work, but the coldness around her eyes loosened. You may continue correcting me, she said, when the information justifies it. That was the closest thing to a welcome I received. It was also the first time she looked at me as if she intended to remember my name. Roxy Chen remembered my name immediately. She also forgot the meeting. I found her 2 floors below the Neon Forge executive suite, lying under a conference table with a screwdriver between her teeth. 6 engineers stood around her pretending this was normal. Miss Chen? Her head appeared from beneath the table. Depends who is asking. Lena Hart, Asterion Communications. Oh, right, the woman who found my safety report. You published it publicly. Yes, but nobody reads engineering forums, except engineers and people trying to prove me wrong. Which one are you? Currently, both. Roxy grinned and slid out from under the table. I like you. We had known each other for 11 seconds. That should have been a warning. Roxy's office looked like a laboratory had collided with a gaming arcade. Prototype drones rested beside expensive sculptures. 3 screens displayed code. A 4th displayed a live poll, asking employees whether she should dye her hair blue. The answer was 82% yes. She ignored the chair behind her desk and sat cross-legged on the floor. I remained standing. We need to discuss the launch demonstration. It's going to be incredible. It is going to simulate a building evacuation in front of 200 reporters. Exactly. Incredible. Your current program assigns emergency routes based on phone location. Yes. What happens when someone does not have a phone? Roxy stopped smiling. I continued. What happens when the system cannot identify a disability? What happens when a parent leaves the recommended route to find a child? What happens when the network fails in the exact emergency it was designed for? One engineer near the wall slowly lowered his tablet. Roxy looked at the simulation screen. The room became very quiet. Most executives would have defended the product. Roxy did not. She stood, crossed the room, and erased half the route model with one sweep of her hand. The demonstration is delayed. An engineer blinked. We have 5 days. Then we have 5 days to make it work for people instead of phones. She turned back to me. You are staying. I have another meeting. Cancel it. It is with Celeste Laurent. Roxy considered this. Delay it in an elegant way. I did not stay. I did, however, send her a list of accessibility consultants before I reached the elevator. At midnight, she sent back a revised model. At 12:15, I sent notes. At 12:20, she replied, "Do you ever sleep?" I wrote, "Do you?" Her answer appeared immediately. Not when something interesting is happening. For reasons I did not examine, I read that message 3 times before turning off my phone. Celeste Laurent was not delayed elegantly or otherwise. She had moved our meeting to one of her hotels and arranged afternoon tea in a private garden overlooking the river. When I arrived 7 minutes late, she was seated beneath a white canopy with a silver pot between her hands. "Ms. Hart," she said, "I was beginning to suspect Helena had imprisoned you in a spreadsheet. Roxy detained me under a conference table. Celeste poured tea into a second cup. How very on brand. She knew I took honey but no milk." I had never met her before. "You reviewed my personnel file." Celeste's eyes lifted to mine. "I review the background of anyone permitted to speak for my company. My tea preference is not in my personnel file." "No, it was in the photograph from last year's employee volunteer event. You were holding a cup from the lobby cafe. Honey packets were visible in your other hand." I looked down at the tea. That is either impressive or unsettling. The two are frequently neighbors. Celeste was beautiful in the way expensive hotels are beautiful. Perfect at first glance, intimidating at the second, and full of locked doors you suspected led somewhere more interesting than the lobby. She wore cream silk and a gold watch with no visible brand. Her dark hair fell over one shoulder. Her voice never rose. People leaned closer because making them come to her was one of the ways she controlled a room. I refused to lean. We discussed the press event, the public shelter design, and Laurent House's plan to use its hotels during emergencies. Celeste answered every question with polished precision until I asked how the company would handle guests who could not pay during a crisis. Our properties will provide temporary shelter in accordance with local agreements. For how long? As required. That is not a number. It is the language approved by legal counsel. It sounds like you plan to remove people as soon as the cameras leave. The temperature in the garden seemed to drop. 2 assistants near the entrance looked at the ground. Celeste set down her cup. Do you believe that is what I intend? I believe vague promises allow intentions to change when they become expensive. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she reached for the draft agreement, crossed out an entire paragraph, and wrote 72 hours in the margin. Minimum, she said. Regardless of ability to pay, I will extend it when necessary. That is clear. You prefer clarity. People trust what they can understand. Celeste looked at me in a way I could not interpret. What do you trust, Lena? The question was too personal for a first meeting and too softly asked to dismiss. People who do what they said they would do when nobody is watching. Celeste glanced toward the river. That must be a very small list. It is. When the meeting ended, rain had begun falling hard enough to blur the city. I opened the transit app and saw that my bus was delayed by 40 minutes. A black car stopped beside the garden entrance. I did not request a driver. I did, Celeste said. Thank you, but I can take the bus. You can. You will not. That sounds less like generosity and more like an order. Her gaze moved to my thin coat, then returned to my face. Would you accept if I asked politely? Possibly. Celeste stepped closer and held out an umbrella. Lena, would you please allow my driver to take you home, so I do not spend the next hour imagining you cold at a bus stop? The honesty surprised me. I accepted. She waited beneath the umbrella until I was inside the car. Only after the door closed did she turn back toward the hotel. That was the first time someone watched a door until I passed safely through it. It was not the last. The Asterion launch succeeded. Roxy's revised evacuation system guided actors through the demonstration without assuming every person moved the same way. Celeste publicly guaranteed 72 hours of emergency shelter. Helena announced an independent oversight committee before reporters could demand one. The coverage was cautious, but positive. Grant Mercer called it a promising beginning, which was chairman language for no one embarrassed me today. My temporary assignment was extended from 1 week to 1 month, then from 1 month to 3. I became the single point of contact between 3 executive offices that communicated mostly through strategic silence and aggressive calendar invitations. My desk was moved to the Asterion floor, directly between Helena's private conference room, Roxy's prototype lab, and Celeste's hospitality suite. At first, their attention was entirely professional. Helena began requesting me in every strategy meeting because, according to her, I prevented imprecise language. Roxy added me to her development channel because I prevented products from forgetting humans existed. Celeste invited me to investor dinners because I could answer uncomfortable questions without sounding defensive. I worked harder than I ever had. I also started being noticed. Reporters asked for me by name. Department heads requested my advice. 3 city governments adopted the crisis language guide I had written. For the first time, the director position no longer felt like something I had to beg Grant to imagine. I was already doing it where everyone could see. That should have been enough. Then Helena noticed I skipped lunch. It happened during a 12-hour budget review. At 3 in the afternoon, a tray appeared beside my laptop, grilled vegetables, soup, and bread from the cafe downstairs. I looked toward the assistants near the door. Nobody claimed responsibility. Helena continued discussing construction costs without looking at me. I waited until the finance director finished speaking. "Did you order this?" Helena turned one page of the report. "Your concentration declined at 220. You measured my concentration? I observed that you read the same paragraph twice. That is unsettling. Eat. That is an order." Yes, I should have objected. Instead, I ate the soup. Helena quietly moved the meeting forward by 15 minutes so I could finish it. The next morning, Roxy installed a small device beneath my desk. "What is that?" "A wellness sensor. Remove it. It only monitors whether you are sitting too long. Remove it. It can also order noodles." "Roxy." "Fine." She removed the sensor. At noon, my computer displayed a message. "You have been sitting for 93 minutes. Walk to the prototype lab. There are noodles." I walked to the prototype lab to delete the program personally. I stayed for lunch. Celeste's attention was quieter. She replaced the fluorescent light above my desk after I mentioned it caused headaches. She kept ginger tea in her suite because I once ordered it when I was sick. When an investor interrupted me 4 times during dinner, Celeste waited until he did it a 5th time and then said, with perfect calm, "If you speak over Ms. Hart again, you will spend the remainder of this partnership communicating through legal counsel." He did not interrupt me again. Neither did anyone else at the table. Each gesture was small enough to explain. Together, they became impossible to ignore. Helena noticed when I was tired. Roxy made helping me look like an experiment. Celeste watched every door until I walked through it, and all 3 women trusted almost no one. But slowly, dangerously, they began trusting me. Helena showed me the first draft of a restructuring plan before she showed the board. Roxy gave me administrator access to systems worth billions of dollars and told me not to make her regret being emotionally reckless. Celeste took me into the original Laurent Hotel kitchen after midnight and told me it was the only room her mother had ever seemed happy in. They did not become less intimidating. They became human in private. That was much more dangerous. The first obvious competition began with a chair. My desk chair broke during a video call and dropped 6 inches without warning. I finished the call while sitting at the height of a disappointed child, then submitted a replacement request to facilities. The following morning, 3 chairs were waiting beside my desk. Helena had sent an ergonomic executive chair in black leather. Roxy had sent a prototype chair that adjusted automatically and contained speakers in the headrest. Celeste had sent a hand-finished Italian chair upholstered in deep green velvet. All 3 women arrived before I could escape. Helena examined Roxy's prototype. "It has no safety certification. It has personality. Chairs should not have personalities. That explains yours." Celeste touched the black leather with 1 finger. "This belongs in a tax attorney's waiting room. It provides lumbar support. So does mine, without looking like punishment." They turned toward me. I looked at 3 chairs that together cost more than my car. Then I dragged my old broken chair back from the maintenance cart. "I will use this until the standard replacement arrives." Roxy looked horrified. "It tried to kill you." It lowered unexpectedly. Helena pointed to the black chair. "Use mine." Celeste moved the green chair closer. "At least test this one." "No." "Why not?" Roxy asked. "Because this is not about my back. It is about which one of you gets to see me using her gift." Silence. Roxy looked at Helena. "She is very good." Helena's expression did not change. "I am aware." Celeste smiled at me. "And what will you do with the chairs?" "Donate them to the employee recovery rooms." Roxy pressed a hand to her chest. My chair has surround sound. Then recovering employees will be extremely entertained. That should have ended the competition. Instead, it taught them that expensive gifts would not work. So they began competing with time. Helena scheduled 7:30 strategy breakfasts. Because mornings were the only part of my calendar Roxy had not invaded. Roxy created late-night product reviews. Because Helena refused to attend meetings after 10, Celeste hosted investor dinners in private rooms where both of them required formal invitations. None of the meetings were technically unnecessary. All of them could have been emails. On Monday, Helena asked me to review a 5-page statement in person. On Tuesday, Roxy declared a messaging emergency because one button in her shelter app said proceed instead of continue. On Wednesday, Celeste required my opinion on the wording of guest evacuation cards and presented 6 versions beside a candlelit dinner for 2. By Thursday, I had spent more time alone with 3 CEOs than with every friend I had combined. Priya noticed. You have cancelled dinner 4 times, she said over the phone. There is a launch deadline. There is always a launch deadline. Which billionaire are you with now? None. Helena entered my office carrying coffee. Priya heard her voice. Is that the terrifying one? You need to be more specific. Helena placed the coffee beside my hand. Priya became silent. Then she whispered, Lena, are all 3 of them courting you? I nearly inhaled coffee. No. Helena's eyes narrowed. Priya continued, Are you courting all 3 of them? Absolutely not. Helena set down the second cup harder than necessary. I ended the call. She looked at me. Who believes you are courting 3 women? No one important. Is one of them Roxy? What? Or Celeste? Helena. Priya was joking. She absorbed that information, but the tension in her shoulders did not disappear. Then she noticed me noticing. This coffee is a practical response to your fatigue, she said. Of course. It has no personal significance. Naturally. She turned toward the door. It is prepared correctly. Honey, no milk. Helena stopped. That is Celeste's tea order for you. I looked down at the cup. It was coffee with vanilla. Helena had remembered. She left before I could thank her. Roxy became less subtle every day. She programmed the elevator to greet me by name. She placed a purple button in the Asterion app labeled Lena Emergency. When I asked what qualified as a Lena emergency, she listed hunger, sadness, transportation delays, boring meetings, and spending more than 45 consecutive minutes with Helena. I deleted the button. It returned 2 hours later. Celeste never admitted to jealousy. She simply improved anything the others gave me until comparison became unavoidable. Helena sent coffee. Celeste hired a barista for the executive floor. Roxy gave me noise-canceling headphones. Celeste converted an unused room into a private, quiet office. Helena assigned a driver during a transit strike. Celeste sent a car containing a blanket, dinner, and a handwritten note reminding me that accepting comfort was not a moral failure. The problem was not that I disliked the attention. The problem was that I liked it too much. I liked the way Helena's voice changed when she said my name in an empty room. I liked the way Roxy searched for my reaction after every joke, as if my laughter mattered more than a room full of applause. I liked the way Celeste could make a crowded ballroom feel private by turning her attention toward me. Each woman offered something different. Helena made me feel capable. Roxy made me feel alive. Celeste made me feel seen. I told myself feelings were not actions. Attraction was not a decision. Nothing had happened. Then the storm hit. A summer electrical storm shut down half the city during an Asterion demonstration. The shelter system switched to emergency power exactly as designed, but a transformer fire blocked the main entrance and trapped 40 guests inside. For 12 minutes, every fear critics had expressed about Asterion became real. Roxy took control of the building systems. Helena coordinated emergency services. Celeste moved frightened guests into the reinforced ballroom and instructed her staff with terrifying calm. I handled the press. Reporters were already outside. Videos of smoke spread across social media. Grant called and ordered us to issue a statement saying the situation was under control. It was not under control. If we lie now, I told him, nobody will believe us when it is. He told me I was not authorized to make that decision. Helena took the phone from my hand. She is now. Then she ended the call. I released a statement acknowledging the fire, explaining the evacuation delay, and promising updates every 10 minutes. Roxy sent me live system data. Celeste brought witnesses who could describe the staff response. Helena stood beside me when I faced the cameras. No one died. No one was seriously injured. The backup systems kept the ballroom safe until firefighters cleared the secondary exit. The next day's headlines did not praise Asterion. They praised the honesty of the response. For the first time, Grant called my work leadership instead of support. I should have felt victorious. Instead, when the building was finally empty, I locked myself inside a service hallway and started shaking. Adrenaline leaves the body without dignity. One moment, I was answering questions in front of cameras. The next, I was sitting on the floor between boxes of hotel towels, unable to make my hands stop trembling. The door opened. Helena found me first. She did not ask why I was on the floor. She removed her jacket, folded it once, and placed it around my shoulders. You did well. Everyone is safe? Yes. Are you sure? I checked personally. I nodded, but my breathing remained too fast. Helena crouched in front of me. Look at me. I did. Count backward from 5. 5. Her hands remained open on her knees, close enough to take but not touching me. 4. The hallway door opened again. Roxy rushed in, saw me, and stopped so quickly she hit the wall. Lena, I am fine. You are wearing Helena's jacket on the floor. I am becoming fine. Roxy sat beside me without asking, and placed her phone on the tiles. The screen showed green lights beside every guest record. Everyone checked out safe, she said. I verified twice. Then I hacked the fire department list and verified again. You should not hack the fire department. There she is. Roxy smiled, but her eyes were wet. Celeste arrived last. She took in the scene, disappeared, and returned with water, sweet tea, and a hotel blanket large enough to cover all 3 of us. For 10 minutes, 4 women sat on the floor of a service hallway, while sirens faded outside. No one competed. Helena kept her hand near mine without taking it. Roxy made quiet jokes until I laughed. Celeste tucked the blanket around my shoulders and said nothing at all. That was the moment the situation became dangerous. Not because they wanted me, because I wanted to remain between them. 2 weeks after the storm, Grant announced that the Director of Strategic Communications position would finally be filled. He asked me to prepare the candidate briefing. I assumed that meant I was being considered. Then I opened the list. My name was not on it. The candidates were experienced. 2 had run political campaigns. 1 had managed global communications for an airline. Another had spent 6 years working directly for Grant. None had managed the Asterion crisis. I went to his office with the list in my hand. Why am I not being interviewed? Grant did not look surprised. The board believes your current executive relationships create a perception problem. What relationships? You spend significant private time with all 3 chief executives, because you assigned me to coordinate them. There are rumors you are using to deny me an interview. He folded his hands. I am protecting you, Lena. If we promote you now, people will say you earned it through access. I earned access by doing the work. Perception does not always respect fairness. Then correct the perception. Do not punish me for it. Grant's smile disappeared. This decision is final. I left before anger made me careless. Helena knew within an hour. She entered my office and closed the door. Grant removed you from the candidate list. How did you find out? That is not relevant. It is if you accessed confidential board records. Helena's silence answered me. I stood. Do not interfere. He has made an indefensible decision. It is my decision to challenge. You should not have to, but I do. Helena looked as if every instinct in her body wanted to remove Grant from the building personally. Lena, I can resolve this with one call, and then everyone will believe exactly what he said, that my career exists because you chose me. Her face went still. I regretted the words immediately, but they were true. I continued more softly. I need to know I can win something without one of you purchasing the outcome. Helena looked away. Understood. She left without making the call. Roxy offered to expose Grant's private expense account. I said no. Celeste offered to move the entire Asterian communications office into Laurent House and appoint me director herself. I said no again. That evening, I went home furious, exhausted, and more confused than I had ever been. Priya arrived with noodles, and the kind of patience only available to someone who had known me before my job taught me to speak in bullet points. I told her everything. The promotion, the rumors, Helena's call, Roxy's illegal suggestions, Celeste's elegant attempt to acquire an entire department because I had been insulted. Priya listened. Then she said, "You are in love with one of them." I stared at her. "That is what you heard? It is what you did not say. I am trying to protect my career, and your heart is making the situation inconvenient. My heart has terrible timing." "Which one?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Priya leaned forward. "Helena?" I thought about the way Helena's hands had remained open beside mine in the service hallway, offering comfort without assuming permission. Maybe. Roxy? I thought about Roxy sitting on a dirty floor in a jacket worth thousands, trying to make me laugh because fear had made her helpless. Maybe. Celeste? I thought about Celeste remembering honey packets in a year-old photograph and every door she had watched until I crossed safely through it. Maybe. Priya put down her noodles. "Lena, I know. You have fallen for 3 billionaires. That sounds greedy when you say it like that. It sounds exhausting. It is." I took out my phone and opened a blank message. "Write it down," Priya said. "I cannot tell them. Do not tell them. Tell me." Sometimes a feeling becomes smaller once it has somewhere to go. So I wrote. I wrote about practical kindness, watch doors, private trust, the way 3 impossible women had made me feel capable, alive, and seen. I kept the language singular because admitting 3 names felt like admitting I had lost control of my own life. When I finished, I read it once. Then my work phone rang. Grant wanted revisions to the candidate announcement by morning. Anger returned so quickly that I switched screens, attached the wrong draft, and selected the first contact group containing the word executive. I pressed send. The message vanished. Priya looked at me. Do you feel better? No? That is normal. My phone displayed 3 read receipts. Helena Cross, Roxy Chen, Celeste Laurent. I stopped breathing. Priya slowly leaned across the table. What did you do? Before I could answer, Roxy reacted to the confession with a red heart. Helena typed, deleted, and typed again. Celeste sent one sentence. May I call you? I turned off the phone. That did not undo the message. It only allowed 3 CEOs to interpret my silence however they wanted. By sunrise, each one had decided I meant her. That was how I ended up in conference room 12, surrounded by flowers, cards, and 3 women waiting for an answer I did not have. After I said I did not know which one I meant, Roxy recovered first. That is not a no. Helena looked at her. It is not a yes. Celeste kept her eyes on me. What do you need? Space. Roxy stepped backward immediately. Not literal space. I mean time, without any of you deciding what the message means for me. Helena nodded once. Reasonable. No flowers. Celeste glanced toward the camellias. After today. No gifts. Roxy quietly removed something from behind her back. It looked like a small robot holding a heart. No fake meetings. No surprise dinners. No security teams, unless there is an actual threat, and no asking Priya questions about my feelings. 3 expressions became suspiciously neutral. You already contacted her. Helena adjusted one cuff, only to confirm your safety. Roxy looked offended. I asked whether you liked women with motorcycles. You do not own a motorcycle. I could. Celeste placed her glove on the table. I asked what you consider romantic. Priya told you? She said emotional honesty and affordable food. That sounds like her. Celeste looked genuinely troubled. She was unwilling to define affordable. I pressed both hands against the table. Stop investigating me. All 3 agreed. For almost 6 hours, they kept the promise. At 2 that afternoon, Helena changed the executive security protocol so every visitor to her office had to check in at my desk. She described this as operational efficiency. At 3, Roxy scheduled a daily development briefing at 4:45, exactly 15 minutes after Helena's last meeting ended. She described this as agile coordination. At 4, Celeste reserved a private dining room for 30 consecutive evenings, so it would be available whenever I became ready to discuss my feelings. She described this as planning. I described all 3 actions as cheating. The competition became stranger after that. Helena prepared a document titled Evidence the Confession Referred to Me. It contained 12 numbered examples and 2 appendices. Roxy made a presentation. The first slide said Lena plus Roxy in animated letters. The second contained a compatibility score she had calculated using an algorithm that she admitted was scientifically irresponsible. Celeste invited me to tea and said nothing about the confession for 40 minutes. Then she placed my message beside the year-old volunteer photograph in which she had first noticed my honey packets. You wrote that she notices details, Celeste said. You all notice details. Roxy once wore 2 different shoes to a Senate hearing. She notices selected details. And Helena? Helena notices everything that might become a risk. Celeste's eyes softened. You do not believe you are a risk. I did not know how to answer that. The truth was, each woman could prove the letter belonged to her because I had written it from moments all 3 had given me. I had combined them into one imaginary woman because one complicated feeling seemed easier to survive than three real ones. Avoiding the truth did not make it less true. Before I could decide what to do, someone made the decision public. The letter appeared online Thursday morning. A business gossip account posted a screenshot beneath the headline, "Asterian's Love Triangle. Junior employee confesses to 3 billionaire bosses." By 8:15, it had been shared 12,000 times. By 8:30, reporters were outside the tower. By 8:40, Grant Mercer had scheduled an emergency ethics hearing. I stood in my office, reading strangers debate whether I was ambitious, delusional, manipulative, or secretly brilliant. One article called me a modern corporate courtesan. Another called me the most efficient woman in business because I had apparently seduced 3 CEOs with one email. Roxy stormed into the room carrying 2 laptops. "I am finding the source. Do not hack anyone. I am conducting energetic digital research. That is hacking with better branding." Helena arrived behind her. "My legal team is preparing injunctions. You cannot erase the internet." "No, but I can make publishing the letter expensive." Celeste entered and closed the blinds. "A car is waiting downstairs. You can stay at my private residence until this settles." I looked at all 3 of them. "Number." Roxy stopped typing. "Lena, people have your address. Because someone sent security there yesterday, and reporters followed them." Helena's jaw tightened. "That was my error." "Yes." Celeste stepped closer. "You do not need to face the board today." "Yes, I do. Grant wants to suspend you," Helena said. "Then he can say it to my face." The ethics hearing began at 10. Grant sat at the head of the boardroom, beneath a screen displaying my private letter in enormous black text. 12 board members filled the table. Lawyers lined the walls. Helena, Roxy, and Celeste sat together on one side, an arrangement that made the entire legal team visibly nervous. I sat alone across from them. Grant opened the meeting. "Ms. Hart, do you acknowledge sending this communication to 3 executives whose companies you represent?" "Yes." "Did you intend to send it?" "I intended to write it. I did not intend those recipients." "Were you engaged in a romantic relationship with any of the recipients at the time?" "No." "Are you currently?" "No." Roxy raised her hand. "We are in a transitional discussion phase." Every lawyer in the room closed their eyes. I turned toward her. "Roxy." She lowered her hand. Grant continued. "Regardless of intent, your message creates serious questions about professional judgment and preferential access. My work created my access. That will be determined by an independent review." "Good." He paused. "You understand that you must be suspended during that process. From what position?" "Your role as Executive Communications Coordinator. The temporary role you used as a reason to exclude me from the director interview?" Several board members looked toward Grant. He did not move. "This hearing is not about promotion decisions. It is if you are claiming my letter influenced them. The timing is irrelevant." "No, the timing is evidence." I placed a folder on the table. Grant had removed my name from the candidate list at 9:14 on Monday morning. I had sent the confession at 1:17 on Wednesday morning. The supposed relationship concern existed 40 hours before the message that allegedly created it. The board's general counsel opened the folder. Grant's voice cooled. "There were already rumors. Created by whom?" He did not answer. Roxy turned one laptop toward the board. "I found the leak." I looked at her. "Legally?" "Mostly." The screenshot posted online contained an internal archive number. Only the recipient accounts, information security, and the board compliance office could access that version. Helena, Celeste, and I surrendered our devices for examination this morning. None exported the message. Grant's face changed for the first time. Roxy continued. The compliance office did. At 7:42, an authorized user downloaded the archive from the chairman's terminal. The room became completely silent. Grant looked at the general counsel. My staff collected evidence for this hearing. At 7:42, I asked. The gossip account published it at 8:12. Your hearing invitation was sent at 8:40. That is a very efficient investigation. Helena placed another document on the table. The gossip account received an anonymous payment through a consulting firm used by the chairman's office. Grant stood. This is an ambush. Celeste's smile was cold enough to frost glass. No, Grant, an ambush requires surprise. You have been underestimating the women in this room for months. Board members began speaking at once. Grant demanded a private session. Legal counsel ordered him to surrender his devices. Roxy looked ready to climb across the table. Helena remained still, which was more threatening. Celeste poured herself water. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I looked at my confession on the screen and realized the leak was only part of the problem. Grant had used my feelings as a weapon because he knew the weapon would work. People were willing to believe a woman could not be both emotionally complicated and professionally capable. They were willing to believe attention from someone powerful erased every hour of work that came before it. Removing Grant would not correct that by itself. I stood. The room quieted slowly. The Asterion Public Summit begins in 50 minutes, I said. Reporters are already waiting. Suspending Grant and issuing a statement through legal counsel will look like another closed-door cover-up. A board member frowned. What do you suggest? Tell the truth. All of it? The leak, the promotion timeline, the review, my mistake, their conduct. I looked toward the 3 CEOs. Helena had used private records to monitor a decision affecting me. Roxy had treated boundaries like software bugs she could work around. Celeste had repeatedly used company resources to make personal gestures. None had ordered my promotion blocked, but all 3 had allowed their interest in me to blur professional lines. Roxy looked down. Celeste's face lost its practiced calm. Helena met my eyes. You are correct, she said. Coming from her, the words changed the room. Roxy closed the laptop. I am sorry. Celeste removed both gloves. So am I. I turned back to the board. Then let us stop confusing protection with secrecy. The public summit had been designed to celebrate Asterion's first completed emergency shelter. Instead, it became the most uncomfortable press conference of Grant Mercer's career. He did not attend. Legal counsel suspended him pending investigation 14 minutes before we walked on stage. I stood at the center podium. Helena, Roxy, and Celeste stood behind me, not around me. The difference mattered. Camera lights came on. Questions began before I finished my first sentence. Is the letter real? Yes. Are you romantically involved with the CEOs? No. Did you receive professional favors? I received attention that sometimes crossed appropriate boundaries. I also performed the work documented in every Asterion report released today. Both facts can exist at once. Did Chairman Mercer leak the email? Evidence indicates it came from his office. An independent investigation has begun. Are you resigning? No. That answer surprised even me. I continued. I made an embarrassing mistake. I sent a private confession to the subjects of that confession. I will not apologize for having feelings, and I will not pretend those feelings produced my work. During the storm, I did not calm frightened families because anyone loved me. I did it because I was prepared. I did not write Asterion's public trust framework because 3 powerful women noticed me. They noticed me because I wrote it. The room became quiet. I displayed the framework on the screen behind us. It included independent crisis reporting, employee protection from executive retaliation, public logs for emergency promises, and a rule preventing romantic or personal relationships from controlling promotion decisions. I had written the first version after Grant removed me from the interview list. I had planned to submit it quietly. Now I submitted it in front of every camera in the city. A reporter raised her hand. Who would enforce these rules against the CEOs standing behind you? An independent public benefit office with its own board, staff, and budget. No executive it monitors would control its director. Who would lead it? I looked at the board members in the front row. That is for an open selection process to decide. Helena stepped toward her microphone. Cross Meridian supports the proposal. Roxy joined her. Neon Forge, too. Especially the rule about executives not treating boundaries as software bugs. A few reporters laughed. Celeste spoke last. Laurent House supports it without amendment. Miss Hart's independence is not a threat to Asterion. It is the reason Asterion survived its first crisis. That quote led every business report that evening. The board opened applications for the new Asterion Public Trust Office the following week. I applied. So did 83 other people. I completed 3 interviews, a written examination, and a public presentation before a panel that included city officials, labor representatives, emergency workers, and exactly 0 women who had sent me flowers. 6 weeks later, the panel selected me unanimously. Not because Helena made a call, not because Roxy found a shortcut, not because Celeste purchased the office, because I had designed the work and proved I could lead it. Grant resigned before the investigation ended. His official statement said he wanted to pursue opportunities outside public-facing leadership. Roxy printed the sentence on a mug. The director position at Cross Meridian went to one of the external candidates. Strangely, that no longer felt like a loss. I had spent years asking for permission to lead a room someone else built. Now I was building one with doors executives could not lock. The romantic problem remained. For 6 weeks, Helena, Roxy, and Celeste kept every interaction professional. Painfully professional. Helena addressed me as Director Hart, even when we were alone. Roxy removed every heart from the scheduling system and replaced them with neutral gray circles. Celeste stopped sending tea and instructed her staff to treat my visits like independent audits. It was exactly what I had asked for. I hated it. On my first official day as director, I found 3 sealed envelopes on my desk. For one dangerous second, I expected contracts. They were letters. Helena wrote that she admired my judgment before she wanted my affection, and that if I never returned her feelings, she would still defend my authority. Roxy wrote that wanting someone did not turn their boundaries into a challenge, and that she was learning the difference between persistence and pressure. Celeste wrote that she had spent her life using money and preparation to prevent uncertainty, but love without uncertainty was only control wearing perfume. None asked me to choose. None assumed the original confession belonged to her. Each ended with the same sentence: "The next message is yours to send." I read the letters twice. Before I answered them, I disclosed everything to the independent oversight panel. Every message, every flower, every feeling. The panel appointed a deputy director to handle any review involving the three founding companies, prohibited Helena, Roxy, and Celeste from influencing my compensation or budget, and required all four of us to follow a written conflict policy. It was not romantic. It was necessary. For once, none of them argued with a boundary designed to protect my work. Then I called Priya. "You are not writing another confession," she said immediately. "How did you know?" "Because trouble gives your face a very specific kind of peace." "I know what I want." "One of them?" "No." Priya became quiet. "Lena." "I know." "All three?" "I know." "That is not a plan. It is the beginning of a conversation. Please check the recipients before you send it." I opened a new message. This time, I selected each name deliberately. Helena Cross, Roxy Chen, Celeste Laurent. I wrote, "Dinner Friday at 7. All four of us. No assistance, no security unless necessary, no buying the restaurant, no algorithms, no presentations, and no one assumes she has been chosen over anyone else. I care about each of you differently. I am willing to explore what that means, slowly, honestly, and on my terms. If any of you needs exclusivity, say so now. If any of you treats this as a competition, I leave." I checked the recipients 3 times. Then I pressed send. Helena replied first. "Understood. Your terms are reasonable." Roxy replied second. "Can I bring flowers if they cost less than $20? I wrote, "No." Celeste replied last. "I agree. For clarification, may I reserve the restaurant without purchasing it?" I wrote, "You may reserve 1 table." Her response arrived immediately. "This will require personal growth." Friday dinner lasted 4 hours. It began like a negotiation and ended with Roxy stealing fries from Helena's plate, Celeste laughing hard enough to forget her posture, and me realizing that power looked very different when nobody in the room was allowed to use it against anyone else. There was jealousy. Of course there was. Helena became silent whenever Roxy made me laugh. Roxy invented reasons to sit closer when Celeste touched my hand. Celeste could communicate an entire threat through the graceful adjustment of a napkin. But they spoke about it. They asked instead of assumed. And when I said enough, they stopped. 6 months later, Asterion's public trust office employed 40 people and monitored shelters in 11 cities. My name appeared on the door. But the office did not belong to me. That was the point. It belonged to every employee who needed somewhere independent to speak, and every family who deserved promises that survived after the cameras left. My personal calendar remained less orderly. Monday evenings usually belonged to Helena, who had discovered she liked small neighborhood restaurants where nobody recognized her and menus contained no strategic language. Wednesdays belonged to Roxy, who continued building unnecessary technology, but now asked before installing it in my apartment. Saturdays belonged to Celeste, who learned to plan dates with a budget, and once spent 3 days researching whether a picnic could be considered luxury hospitality. Some evenings belonged to all 4 of us. Some belonged only to me. That rule was the most important. The 3 women never became less intense. Helena still watched every exit when I entered a crowded room. Roxy still treated missing me like a technical emergency. Celeste still kept a car available whenever rain appeared in the forecast. But they no longer confused watching with owning, helping with deciding, or love with permission. On the anniversary of the accidental confession, I arrived at my office and found 3 flowers in a plain glass jar, 1 white rose, 1 wild orchid, 1 red camellia. The total arrangement could not have cost more than $20. A single card rested beside it. No assumptions, no competition. Dinner tonight? 3 signatures appeared at the bottom. I took a photograph and sent it to Priya. She replied, "Look at you. One accidental email away from managing 3 yanderes and an international public trust." I wrote back, "The public trust is easier." Then I opened the group conversation and typed one word. Yes. Helena reacted with a check mark. Roxy reacted with 6 hearts, deleted 5, and replaced them with 1 neutral grey circle. Celeste sent the restaurant address and added, "I have not purchased it." I smiled at the screen. For years, I believed being chosen by someone powerful would prove I was valuable. Then 3 powerful women chose me at once, and I learned that being wanted could be flattering, intoxicating, and still completely separate from worth. My value had been present in every crisis I solved, every truth I told, and every room I entered before any billionaire learned to watch the door. Love did not create that value. Real love learned how to respect it. The first confession had been a mistake because I was afraid to name what I wanted. The next message was different. It was deliberate. It contained boundaries, uncertainty, and all 3 names. So now, whenever someone asks which of the 3 CEOs I accidentally chose, I tell them the truth. I did not choose one of them by mistake. I chose all 3 of them on purpose. And these days, before I press send, I always check the recipients. Usually,